Hi, this is Alex S. Johnson, and this is part two of my reading from Razor Baby versus Ice, which is from the Trumpocalypse anthology published by Horrified Press. And this is a story about my character Razor Baby, who you'll hear a bit more about. He's just been picked up by the Immigration and Naturalization Services. To them, he was just another Mexican. A potential rapist, murderer, dealer in dangerous drugs. He actually preferred it this way. Besides, he was glad to be free of the roach-infested apartment. The gringo landlord had just raised his rent, while the pockets and crevices in the plaster remained from an earthquake 10 years previous, and rats scratched behind the sheetrock. The hot water heater had died a lonesome, shrieking death. And the police harassment was non-stop. A blessing to white, conservative, heterosexual Christian men was devastation to all others. The xenophobia and outright racism, always just below the surface of American society, was now by executive order mandated into law. So rather than fight the guys in the blue jumpsuits, he went willingly. They didn't need an excuse anymore to stomp him into sidewalk splatter. Of course they found drugs on him, some of the kindness he kept in plain sight for just such an occasion. "We'll have to confiscate this," one said, holding up the baggie gingerly with a thumb and index finger as though rougher handling might cause it to explode. Razor Baby hoped they enjoyed the arsenic he'd sprinkled on the Mexican bitch weed, also for just such an occasion. He savored the images of the agents sucking poison into their lungs all along the long, bumpy ride in the back of the black panel van with his hands cuffed behind him and a bag over his head. The last detail he thought was overkill, but reducing unique humans to ciphers was what the government did best. He wished he could be a fly on the wall when their hearts gave out and they drooled some viscous black fluid. Make racists drool death again. No, that was the motto. Although he could easily have taken down the agents, that would just draw unwanted attention to him. Being an anonymous wetback worked in his favor. Invisible, he could free his fellows, los de Islan. The fleet of vans continued to the neighborhood as the agents rousted families, packing them in like sardines, ignoring the cries, the pleading, the anguish. Naturally, the agents had no knowledge of Razor Baby's special powers, the blades that sat within his body like soldiers waiting to strike on command. "Here's another one," said the guard, who watched the line of shivering, fearful humans as one by one they proceeded through a series of stations. They processed him like any other inmate, sprayed him with disinfectant chemicals, placed him in a long, low, gray building in a room with a dozen others. They gave him a thin mattress and sheets that stank of bleach. He placed his tray down on the lunch line and ate the slop they served him. He kept his own counsel, but already word had begun to spread. Orale, they brought in the Razor Baby. Simone. His presence in the detention camp gave the other prisoners hope. The man had become a legend. A story told in whispered voices. In person, he was even more impressive. Hair black as a raven's feathers down to his ass. His torso, all muscled form that wriggled with the vengeance-bound souls implanted in his father's seed. His father had been a white man, a serial killer who preyed on poor women. In raping Razor Baby's mother, he had somehow endowed his son with the spirit of his victims. Vengeance had made its own demonic children. The souls, crazed beyond known insanity, pushed against the thin walls in his throat, below his ribs, an itch that only murder could cure. They fed on anger and pain, thrusting bladed weapons through his body, taking back, life by life, pieces of what had been denied them. But Razor Baby had vowed to Santa Muerte herself that never again would he take an innocent life, and that vow was sacred beyond all others. In honor of the living God that walked among them, many inked themselves with his image. They hoped to borrow some of his aura, his charisma, his power. He assented silently to this tribute, knowing full well that whatever strength his fellow prisoners obtained from the tattoos was not extrinsic, but came from a well deep within them. To help them manifest that strength, he taught them the secrets of Los Invisibles, a tribe of magicians he had studied with in Taos that knew all the arts of indirection, how to fade from sight, blend with the walls. He introduced them to arcane symbols that, once inscribed, would slowly penetrate the damp plaster, scorching through the very molecules of hallways, corridors, dorms. He showed them potions and unguents that undid the malefic bonds that held their minds captive with self-hate. He schooled them in the practice of meditation and how to focus their energies beyond the limits of the camp. Flesh is a prison for the spirit, he told them. Free yourself and no camp will ever hold you. When the order for deportation finally came, when the trucks rumbled, waiting for their payload of orange-clad slaves, and a rifle shot marked the time for departure, authorities found on the last inspection of the camp only an absence. The inmates, it seemed, had vanished into thin air. All the authorities could recover was encomiums to the hope Razor Baby had given them, flowers to Santa Muerte, curled their wizened petals in the relentless sun. The air in the long, grim buildings smelled like cinnamon. Joseph Sphinx, the camp commander, filed up and down between the line of agents whose duty was to keep a keen eye on any suspicious behavior among the aliens. Exasperation shone in his eyes. Was nobody aware at all of the supernatural being who smuggled himself into the camp? What the fuck were you thinking? You never heard of the Razor Baby? Don't you read any comic books? You admitted him yourself, said Agent Joe Sanderson. He flinched, awaiting the commander's wrath. That is a barefaced lie, he roared. Then, on second thought, I guess it's a bit like the Spanish Inquisition. Spanish Inquisition, sir? Nobody expects it. What, you don't like comedy? So what are we going to tell Washington? The commander smiled. Absolutely nothing. This camp never happened. As for you all, he pulled out a walkie-talkie and whispered something into it. The vaporization was instant and painless. Commander Sphinx continued to walk back and forth among the crumbling statues. The thought occurred to him that, in a way, he and the Razor Baby had more in common than he and his agents, ex-agents, former people. Would their families miss them? Most likely. But this was war, and since nobody had thought to make the strategy clear or fully delineate the enemy, the possibility remained that it was not the teeming, hell-bent hordes described vaguely by the president. Perhaps the war was won against humanity. Quien sabe? The commander got in his jeep. As he sped away, the ground shook. His rear-view mirror showed an orange flash that belched forth a cloud that, while not a mushroom, had all the clout of the real thing. Before leaving, Sphinx had detonated the MOAB, secreted beneath the camp's administrative headquarters, just in case the unthinkable happened, a mass escape. Then he drove across the desert and far away to Razor Baby's home in the Seer wastelands.